So what we're going to do is talk about modern data architecture and a modern data architecture for business intelligence using MicroStrategy and Hadoop and Hortonworks. So first, as Kim said, just a little bit of housekeeping or background. I myself am the VP of Strategic Marketing here at Hortonworks. Been working in the data management industry for more than 20 years, and I like to spend a lot of time outdoors myself. Anurag, why don't you just give yourself a quick introduction?
Sure. Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. This is Anurag Tandon. I'm with MicroStrategy. I'm a director of product marketing, and I'm responsible for big data and analytics. I've spent about 14 years in the company going through the entire, from implementation to sales to marketing of BI products and solutions. And just a little bit about myself, I consider myself, a jack of most sports. I try to play as much as I can, but I'm sort of not a master by any means of anyone. So that's a little bit about me.
Super. Thanks so much, and thanks for joining us today. So let me get things moving forward here. Now, we've had our brief introduction. What I'd like to do now is take you through some of the overall drivers for a modern data architecture, and I suspect this will resonate with many of you on the call that we have today. We actually have quite a few folks joining, so we're quite excited about that. Thanks again. So first, let's just take a look at the existing data architecture. This is a simplified diagram, no doubt about it, but I think it represents the architecture in a simplified form that most organizations have in some form or fashion today. Collecting data from a range of sources, fairly traditional sources, loading those into some kind of repository, structured repository, enterprise data warehouse, a relational database system, some kind of scale-out system or NoSQL like database, and then analyzing that data with a range of tools, of course, including things like MicroStrategy. But this is the simplified diagram of an architecture, and I'm certain that if you're reviewing today, you probably recognize that in some form or fashion your organization has this. Now, the thing about it is that this infrastructure, this way that things have been being used is under pressure, and it's under pressure from data. We've all heard about the kind of quote-unquote big data thing. So data growth, according to almost all industry experts, is going to be off the charts, right? According to IDC, 40 zettabytes of data total by 2020. So every 18 months, the amount of data that is stored and captured in the world, or generated, I should say, in the world, is doubling. So huge amounts of data. Almost 85% of that are new types of data, data that organizations either considered exhaust data that they weren't previously looking to exploit, or is being generated from some new type of business system or new type of collection capability. And in fact, machine-generated data, in particular, is growing by 15x by 2020. So almost everything is instrument. So this is putting a lot of pressure on that existing architecture. And so that really is resulting in what we're calling a modernized data architecture, meaning one where Hadoop is a component that's added to capture these kind of new or emerging data sources that organizations are looking to take advantage of. And one thing that's very important to understand, as this modernized architecture is being set up, is it's one that's complementary to the existing system. So it doesn't replace the relational database systems, data warehouse, and the like. It's meant to complement those systems by adding new capabilities to the organization, enabling new kinds of applications, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But Hadoop itself gives a place to land cost-effectively those kind of new forms of data that are coming in a much higher volume, which are coming in a much more variety in terms of the overall structure that those data sources are being collected. So that data can now be landed somewhere in the organization cost-effectively and then further processed and transformed. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the specific use cases here. So, Hadoop, just for those who are not familiar, is an open source scale-out data management software. It really forms the core of a modern Hadoop-based data platform, which again complements the existing technology. So it's something new, born out of the web properties back when Google and Yahoo and Facebook and others were just really scaling and ramping their business, and that's now being applied to, I'd say, more traditional general enterprises as they're looking to exploit it. So that's really Hadoop. It's really sitting at that core and powering that modernization of the data architecture. So there's really two drivers for this adoption, and two that are really driving the overall modernization of the architecture. One is to take and drive specific efficiencies in the workloads. In other words, running workloads on the most efficient piece of infrastructure that makes sense for them. So taking data and traditional workloads for transformation and other kinds of data computation, and for example, moving that to Hadoop because it's a more cost-effective infrastructure. So it's really about driving efficiencies in the overall infrastructure that's in place today, and doing things at a more cost-effective way. The second driver is around creating new business applications. So having all of these new data sources means that there's new opportunities that can be found to do a better job of serving customers, or do a better job of creating new products, or maintenance on existing products, for example. So this new and emerging data sources are driving opportunities through new business applications that organizations are able to create now that they can cost effectively capture the data. And at the core of that really is Apache Hadoop. So just double-clicking really on the drivers and what's the opportunity. What are those data types that we've talked about, and what do we mean when we say that there's new data types that are being captured and they're going to be captured in Hadoop? So firstly, sentiment data, how customers feel about a product or a service or a delivery, right? It's being expressed through rating sites and blogs and tweets and a whole range of ways that sentiment about a product or service might be expressed, right? That comes in a somewhat unstructured way. Clickstream data, data that's information about how somebody's interacting with or visiting you on the website. So it's not just about the one click that results in the purchase, but what are the 5 or 10 or 20 clicks that happened before that? What pages were viewed? Can I get some additional insight? Can I be more proactive and predictive about what my visitors are doing in order to drive more opportunities for me? So look at analyzing that website data to get a better understanding of what people are doing. Sensor machine data, almost everything's instrumented. GE engines that run in Boeing aircraft now kick off 30,000 data points a second. So huge amounts of data being created by being able to collect that machine-generated data. It enables further analysis. Geospatial, where is a product or service being consumed, right? So you know where somebody's looking, and you can do a better job of offering them products or services based on where they are. Server logs coming off of applications and other research-related activities to be more predictive and proactive in terms of things like failure, part failure in systems. And then generally unstructured data might be text or video or any of those kinds of data. Excuse me. So ultimately, this means that you can drive further efficiencies in that architecture by being able to collect data and run workloads on their specific on the specific infrastructure that makes most sense. So I said, for example, one that we've seen in the market is around ETL optimization, and that's not to say that an ETL tool in and of itself is not valuable. It's just certain kinds of workloads that are run are more efficient when run on an infrastructure like Hadoop. So what you'll see is that certain kinds of transformational workloads might be moved to a Hadoop infrastructure because you're processing that and doing the transformation close to where the data is landing. So there's efficiencies in terms of moving data, there's efficiencies in terms of processing data, and that workload optimization is one of the ways that efficiency is going to be driven in that overall data architecture. So the second, and we talked a little bit about this, is new types of data are driving new types of analytic applications. So the ability to create a stack of analysis that's that's using Hadoop as kind of the core, that's going to allow organizations to build new kinds of applications that they couldn't before using these kinds of data types that are going to allow them to unlock, additional value. And this is definitely driven by kind of a line of business. It ends up being either somebody in business IT or somebody who is very close to the business and understands what the needs are of the business, and can marry that with the kinds of data that are being collected. So given that kind of unique position and unique insight, it gives them the ability to help build these net new kinds of business applications, taking advantage of these new data types that they have available. So in terms of adoption for Hadoop, for this technology, there's really 3 requirements. And as I said, it's important that everybody take away that Hadoop is not going to replace those existing infrastructures, but there are some definite drivers that are important in terms of taking advantage. And that is, it must be integrated. It must enable you to leverage your skills. For example, your skills you might have in tools like MicroStrategy, and then it must provide the key services in terms of a platform. So let me double click into those 3 requirements. So firstly, the platform must provide the key services, meaning Hadoop is an open source technology. It can be complex to deploy and run, and so in order to drive the overall adoption, the platform must provide all of those key services, meaning operational services. How do I deploy, monitor, and manage it? It must be easy to do. The data services for loading, connecting to tools, again, like MicroStrategy, so that you can leverage the infrastructure through the data services. And then it must provide platform services, the ability to have it be highly available and survive disaster through disaster recovery techniques, and provide security and all these kind of cross-platform services. And then finally, you must be able to run it in the infrastructure you want, whether it's on-premise or in a virtualized environment, hosted in a cloud environment, as you can do through partners with Microsoft like Rackspace and Microsoft, and then as an appliance, as you can do through partnerships we have with companies like Teradata. So it must provide those key services in order to make this new infrastructure easy to deploy, easy to run and manage and consume for the organization. Secondly, it must enable you to analyze and leverage your key skills, right? So Hadoop has native tools for analyzing and processing data, but more importantly, you as an organization have trained and spent time and resource getting a staff up and used and comfortable with and proficient with a set of tools. The Hadoop platform must enable you to leverage those skills in those existing infrastructures. So SQL skills, for example, you need to be able to take advantage of those. Report writing and analysis skills, all of those things must be leverageable in order for the platform to be more widely adopted. Those are one of the things that we at Hortonworks are very focused on through partnerships like we have with MicroStrategy, enabling you to leverage the existing skills you have, and I think you'll hear more about that from Anurag in just a moment. And then finally, it must be interoperable. The interfaces that are in the platform must allow it to interface into applications and tools like business intelligence tools, again, that we'll hear, the developer ID, and other systems that are used to analyze and manipulate data, the systems that are used to store and process data. So data warehouse must interoperate, I'll call it horizontally, if you will, and then it must interoperate smoothly with the platforms below. It must be native on those systems, for example, natively running on Windows. So it must be interoperable, it must provide the skills, and it must be integrated. Those are some of the key drivers for adoption in terms of helping to really realize this vision of the modernized data architecture. So, in fact, we work very closely with MicroStrategy to bring the full capabilities of the MicroStrategy platform through to and allow it to leverage the technologies that are existing in Hadoop, so that you as an organization can be, I'll call it, abstracted away from the complexities that one might want to or might experience when deploying this. And actually what I'd like to do now is turn it over to Anurag to kind of tell you a little bit about how MicroStrategy is integrated with Hadoop at another level below this, and how you can take advantage of the data that you can now collect cost effectively in Hadoop. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Anurag. I think you're still on mute.
Great background. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, John. I think it was a great background, and in terms of how the data landscape is changing in organizations and businesses today. So where MicroStrategy plays in, and I'll get to that in just a second, but just a little brief background on MicroStrategy. So we're an analytics and BI vendor, and we've existed for over 20 years in this particular space. Our pure focus has been on comprehensive BI platforms. And global company, 600 million revenue. The key thing I want to say is because of our pure focus on BI and analytics, we spend a lot of R&D into that and innovate, and with partners like Hortonworks, make sure that we are supporting as new data platforms emerge and new technologies emerge, making sure our customers can get the most benefit out of those platforms and architectures. So with that, here are the sort of the three different things that we see. Obviously, today we're talking about big data analytics, but it's important to understand that even though your focus, I'm hoping the audience here today is focused on big data analytics, it's important to remember that it's not just about big data analytics. It's about analytics to provide value from all of the data in the organization. So when you consider that, and to echo what John was saying, with a data architecture that doesn't just contain Hadoop, but also contains everything else that organizations have from a database standpoint, you have to consider the different needs and the different uses of data and analytics that organizations have. So what we focus on is, we have a great momentum around big data and analytics today, and that's a part of the organization is focusing towards that. And maybe it's the data scientists, maybe it's the business analysts who are trying to understand what value we can extract from big data. But to make it part of the organization and bring it in and make sure that the whole organization is getting value from it, including business users, including everyday decision makers, you have to consider some of the other aspects as well, like self-service analytics that business analysts want to do on any type of data, whether that is big data, whether that is relational data, whether that is personal data sources that like Excel files and things like that, like text files, CSVs, log files that analysts want to access and analyze, and be able to analyze them in visual ways, being able to analyze without writing code, things like that, intuitively in a very fast, interactive sort of fashion. And then there is the enterprise-grade production strength BI that has always existed over decades, that IT controls, that has that's embedded in most organizations' fabric. How do we bring in self-service analytics that business analysts want to do, the big data analytics that business analysts or data scientists want to do, and how do we bring that and operationalize it in a way that it becomes part of the BI fabric and the analytics fabric that is then provided to all of the business users, all decision makers in the company. So that's what our focus is on having a platform that provides all of these things, and to the extent big data plays into the mix in terms of where data is coming from and how that merges in or combines against small data or relational data that organizations have. How do we make that possible? How do we bring that forth from a single platform? Now, whether that is on web, whether that's on mobile devices, whether that's in portals, whether it is deployed on premises or in a cloud-based environment, our focus is to be able to do all of those things. So in a nutshell, the platform that we have, so we've always, like I said, 20 years plus in the BI space, so we're great with relational databases, and what we're doing over the last few years is having great integration with big data sources like Hortonworks, and being on top of the innovations that are coming up. So HDP 2.0 was released a week or so ago, being ahead of the curve and making sure that is certify that our platform works with it, that we take advantage of the latest innovations there, and bring them in and provide, whether that's dashboards or self-service analytics or reports, statements, OLAP analysis, to everybody in the organization. How do we make that possible in a single unified interface, if you will? So specifically when it comes to big data analytics, and that's my focus, we think of these 5 key capabilities that organizations today need. Now, they might need them at different times in their big data journey. They might need some or more of them depending on their requirements. But these will come up at some point or another during your big data journey. And our hope and focus is that our platform can provide all of these capabilities in a single place for all business decision makers, like I said. So data access combination from all enterprise data. So if you have a modern data architecture that goes across, whether that's relational databases, whether that is Hadoop-based platforms like Hortonworks, whether that is personal data sources that you want to bring in and make them part of the enterprise structure, how do you access, and not only access, how do you do it in an optimal way, and then how do you combine them so the view that the business sees is unified and is coherent, it's cohesive. Then being able to provide business users with self-service exploration of data, but not just self-service, being able to take it from self-service to productionalizing it in terms of dashboards that everyday decision makers can use. Being able to do that with advanced and predictive analysis capabilities, being able to analyze semi-structured and unstructured data, and then being able to do it with live streaming data or live updates with real-time analysis. All of these capabilities we feel are key, and I'm going to talk about a few of them in terms of how we do it, and do a quick demo as well. So when it comes to self-service, the key is not just the analysis. The key is also how do business users themselves explore data when it comes from multiple places. So maybe you have Hortonworks and you have a Hive environment set up that you can then access tables from, but then how do you combine that against spreadsheets? How do you combine that with relational databases? Being able to do that without writing SQL, without writing scripts, without writing code is very important for business users. So that's what self-service analytics provides through MicroStrategy. Very cool visualizations, but it's not just about the cool factor of the visualizations. How do they make for interesting insights? How can they be interactive so business users not only understand what a visual means, but then be able to drill into it and look at it from different viewpoints to adjust their question or the analysis that they're following. So and then being able to use many different visuals to essentially articulate the insights that they're finding in the data. So I guess one more point before I go into the demo. All of this analytic capability is strengthened when you have the full scale of analytical ability or maturity available in that platform. So the very simple stage of data summarization, okay, what is happening, but then going beyond that's very simple. I'm hoping everybody takes that as a baseline, and not only that, but being able to compare what's happening this year versus last year, this quarter versus last quarter, obviously over time, but then also comparing against comparables, benchmarking against whether it's competitors, whether it's other baselines that you may have, whether it's cohorts, and things like that, and then going into even more types of analysis that are a little more sophisticated than just summarization or trend analysis, which is relationship analysis. A great capability needed for big data, and I think an essential capability needed for big data, which is how do you correlate against many different factors, many different incidents that may be happening. So doing that relationship analysis, set analysis, being able to interactively decide what portion of your data you're going to look at and then analyze it from different viewpoints. And then taking all of that and then building in projections, building in optimization algorithms, whether that is using capability that our platform contains. We have over 300 plus functions with data mining functions with some optimization capability, but our focus is not just to provide everything ourselves, because we know companies will need flexibility in how they do the analyticals, modeling, analytical skills that they have in the organization require these different tools. So R is a great open source tool right now. It's being used by many people, over 5,000 packages available. We integrate well with R. We integrate well with products like SPSS, KXN, the products that support the predictive modeling markup language, PML. It's an industry standard, and bring in all of the analytics companies do in those tools into MicroStrategy. So from a business user standpoint, it's one single place that they need to go to look at all of their data, analyze all of their data, and then take those insights and turn them into action. So that was a very quick overview of what we do. Let me show a quick demo, and it's going to be around self-service analytics. So if I can share my screen. Kim and John, let me know if you can't see what I'm showing.
We're seeing, I think we're seeing your desktop. Yes.
Yes.
I think that looks right.
Great. So this is the MicroStrategy interface, and I'll tell more about what the specific product is that you're looking at in a little bit. But essentially, what we're going to do here is start by, from a business user standpoint, I want to create a dashboard. I want to create a self-service dashboard. And the first point there is, okay, I want to look at data. What data? Let's start with Hortonworks. So in this case, we're establishing a connection to Hortonworks using Hive. And so we're going to pick the right driver there, set up the connection. As soon as we're able to make that connection, now what pops on the left-hand side is a list of Hive tables and structures. And we can simply, by dragging and dropping, take a bunch of these tables, bring them into our pane where we can start, linking them together, creating our queries, and creating a sandbox, if you will, of the analysis that we're going to do. So here, quickly, what we've done is we've dragged 5 tables. And this data that in the 5 tables is about casino analysis of slot machines. Now, from a big data standpoint, you would think on a casino floor there are hundreds of slot machines, right? And many other tables and so on. So for them to be able to analyze every little action, every spin of the wheel, if you will, and to see exactly what happened, what was the frequency in which it happened, what was the result of each spin, and how the machines might be performing against what they have optimized it for, and things like that is huge, right? So being able to do that over a long period of time. So in this case, we're going to look at about 6 months of data, which may not be sufficient. We may have to go more than that, but just for the sake of analysis and a demo, that's what we're going to do here. And we'll start by bringing in all of this data, and then first thing the business user needs to do is, month in this table is the same as month in this table, or slot machine in this table is the same thing as in that table. Now, in this case, you see then they're very neatly named. It may not be so, and that's still okay. And then being able to quickly see, so this is the SQL we're going to generate against Hortonworks using Hive, and that Hive command is going to turn it into MapReduce and then bring that data in. And what's going to happen is as soon as you hit execute on this SQL statement, it will take the data out of the Hadoop platform, create a MicroStrategy in-memory cube, if you will. It's a virtual cube. It sits in memory, and I'm not showing you that process, but just for the sake of time, it's done in the background. And what we'll do is we'll start by creating a dashboard against this cube. So here on the left-hand side, what you see is all of the different things that were available in those tables. Now sit on the left in this is my data. sitting in the cube. And what we're going to start is, start visualizing this data. So very quickly, we're just choosing a particular visual. Here it's revenue by day. It's too spiky. So what I want to do is smooth it a little bit. And here I'm inserting a function, just a moving average function. You can type it in. You can drag and drop it. There's a whole function pane available here. You can bring in other functions and so on. And very quickly, it's a moving average over the last 7 days, or moving average of 7-day revenue that we're bringing in, and start analyzing it that way. And of course, I can keep adding more and more, series to this particular graph. So looking at revenue, looking at moving averages, looking at profits, looking at how much jackpot I'm issuing against a period of time. But then I can correlate that against other visuals that I may want to create. So here we're going to look at, instead of year, we're going to replace it with slot machine type. So you can look at penny slots, you can look at nickel slots, quarter slots, and so on, all the way up to $100 slot machines. And you can see very clearly from a casino floor standpoint, most of that revenue is coming in from the quarter slot machines. And you can keep adding more and more visuals in this way, right? So you may want to look at performance of these slot machines, not just by revenue, but then by exactly what kind of profit we're going to get out of these slot machines. So that's the slot hold measure. That's the jackpot amount that influences how much profit we get. And very quickly with these manipulations, what we're looking at is sort of a mirror image of profit on top and how much jackpot we're issuing on the bottom, clearly stating that, when we give out more jackpot, we pay out more in terms of jackpot, we're retaining less in terms of hold or profit. And so you can play with it, you can play with colors and things like that. So just for clarity, and this whole, you can continue with more and more visuals. I think you get the idea. And it's not just limited to one view in which you have all of these 5 visuals listed, but you can create as many views as you want. And they can all have different context. They can be a workflow-based dashboard. So it's sort of a decision process, if you will. It can be many different things that you could create with this type of capability of just visually exploring data. And it's huge for big data because with big data, you don't necessarily know how you're going to analyze it. This sort of paradigm lets you just very rapidly create many different views of the data and then understand what brings the most value or what's the most logical approach. And so here we built something different. One key capability that I'm going to show is around filtering of this data. So if you bring in filter, the filter panel here, any of these things on the left-hand side which are in your data can be used to filter how much data are you visualizing. So here we can look at just the underperforming slot machines and seeing the ones that have lower hold percents, what is happening with those particular slot machines. And I didn't want to belabor this too much. So in the spirit of keeping it short, you get the idea of how powerful this could be as you add more and more filters, or if you even blend in other data sources. So if that's something of interest to you, we'll present you with some options to try this out yourself. So just wanted to do that quick demo. And if I switch back to slides now, I'm going to stop the sharing. Go back to slides. So the idea of business users trying to do the exploration themselves is great because it sort of helps IT to focus on other things. For example, the business user defining what type of dashboards they want to see, IT then taking it and making it more production-like, making sure that there's appropriate security placed on the data, making sure there's governance in the data, making sure it performs better, things like that. And so and then making it available on mobile devices or whatnot, and adding transactional capability, adding real-time capability, things like that. So you can go from self-service to production dashboards that now everyday business users can use. In MicroStrategy, what we try to do is essentially provide this in a way that all of these styles, whether that's self-service or dashboards or reports and statements, advanced analysis, OLAP analysis, what have you, all coexist in the same in the same interface, in the same place. And you build it once, and with very little rework, if at all, you're able to deploy it across web, mobile, documents, email, what have you, and then publish it to as many people as you want. So that's the idea. Let me discuss a couple of customers. So Yahoo is a joint customer between Hortonworks and MicroStrategy. And in Taiwan, Yahoo is all over the world, and they use us all over the world. But in Taiwan specifically, Yahoo is the #1 e-commerce site, #7, I think, retailer overall. And they have so much volume, obviously, they're storing all of the clickstream data that they get from their website in Hortonworks. And what they use for transactions and the purchases that are happening through their e-commerce site, it's an Oracle database. Now, having these two different data platforms and trying to be able to marry transaction data with what people were viewing and how they happen on that purchase, like what steps did they take to go from viewing different products to actually purchasing something is also important for them to understand. And so they marry both of these data platforms in a single architecture with MicroStrategy on top, so that they can look at it side by side and understand causation. And then take that to the next level and influence what kind of promotions that they may run and things like that. And they allow executives and business managers and analysts all to have access to this in a self-service way or an ad hoc way, depending on the role, and all through MicroStrategy. So these are the types of use cases that are happening today, right? How do we access data in Hadoop? How do we access data in a database? How do we combine that together? The next level that we see is taking petabytes of information, and when it goes beyond the capabilities of let's say the data platform to be able to provide interactive analysis. So, for example, what Facebook is doing with MicroStrategy is they obviously have their Hadoop environment, and what they do is they have 200 petabytes of data. Now, their users need to be able to analyze that data in many different ways. They have 1.1 billion users. There's demographic information in that data. There's interest information in that data in terms of the pages people are liking and the places that they're checking in, and the behavior of how they use the Facebook service, and so on and so forth. To be able to analyze that data from an unlimited number of combinations and permutations against 200 petabytes sitting in Hadoop interactively and bringing that in seconds requires some level of performance optimizations. And what we're working with them is around new in-memory capability that takes this big data to the next level. So you have the data architecture, the data platforms to store, process, manipulate the data, but then in terms of using it interactively in use cases which demand ultimate flexibility, you also need great in-memory performance, and you need the ability to load up as much data as you can in memory to be able to do that analysis in seconds on mobile devices and things like that. So I encourage you, if you haven't seen the MicroStrategy website recently, to go over there and check out the Facebook example as well. So with that, what I'm gonna end with is just a couple of options. As I mentioned, it's a comprehensive platform, but you don't want to do everything at once at the beginning, right? So self-service analytics is a great place to get started with big data. And what we provide is that capability for free through two mechanisms. One, it's a desktop tool. You can download it. You can point it to Hortonworks. You can point it to other data sources. You can blend data on the fly, and you can do it without writing code. It's very quick to install. It's free. It's actually free for life. So I encourage you to download it and try it. If you don't want to do that, and if you want to do if you want to have some other features like mobile deployment and things like that, there's MicroStrategy Analytics Express, which is a software as a service offering, and that's also available for free for a year that you could try. We'll have Kim talk about some of the other things that you can do following this webinar, and then we'll take some questions.
Great. Thanks, Anurag. That was great and a really great demo. I like the heat maps. So as you said, there's a couple of other next steps, and we definitely want to take time for your questions. So I will ask, if you have a question and haven't already submitted it to the question and answer panel, please go ahead and do so now. Kim is going to walk us through. But in the meantime, there's absolutely going and checking out more info on the MicroStrategy website. We have a sandbox, single node VM of the Hortonworks data platform that you can download. It includes tutorials, and there is coming imminently a tutorial on connecting and using MicroStrategy with HTTP, so you can get your hands on that directly. And of course, we'll always keep you up to date if you follow us on Twitter. So, Kim, I think we've had quite a few questions already, so maybe it makes sense to go ahead and jump into those.
Okay, great. So before we get started with a couple of questions, the recording of this presentation will be posted on our website by the end of this week. It's already live on SlideShare for the deck, so hang on tight, and I'll notify you guys once the recording's been on our website. But you guys will get a recording of today's webinar. So the first question is for you, John. Is HTTP 2.0 support sentiment analytical tools?
Yes, so the short answer is yes. The HTTP 2.0, the Hortonworks Data Platform 2.0, which was just released 2 weeks ago, has all of the standard interfaces that allow you to interface a sentiment analysis tool, both from the standpoint of loading data into HTTP, but also connecting to and analyzing the data through whether it's ODBC connector or any one of the other standard connectors. So short answer is yes.
Great. Another question for you, John, just going down the list. Are users getting the speed they need against big data sources like Hadoop?
Getting the speed they need? Yeah. So I'd say that you have to look at, per kind of the earlier part of the conversation, Hadoop itself provides a scale-out processing capability, but at a different workload compared to things like data warehouse and databases. So you have to look at what your workload requirements are, and make sure you run the appropriate workload in the right infrastructure. Hadoop itself traditionally had been a batch-oriented infrastructure. As of Hadoop 2, it's got a new component that allows faster, more interactive pieces to be plugged into the framework, but I wouldn't call them real-time or highly interactive per se frameworks just at the moment. So short answer is you have to use the right infrastructure against the right system. I think using products like MicroStrategy, where it's pulling back the data and then allows you to explore it through a cache, through the cube, actually provide a great way to intermediate into the capabilities of Hadoop and into an end-user tool.
Great. In order to build an enterprise data warehouse on Hadoop, what skills do we need, John?
So skills-wise, Hadoop itself fundamentally is a Java-based infrastructure, so certainly Java skills, but a lot of the other skills translate directly. So there are some data modeling skills, understanding what the structure of data is. There are some inherent SQL tools. There's one called Hive, so your SQL skills will help you, and scripting skills as well. But in terms of the overall question, in terms of building a data warehouse on Hadoop, I think you have to, again, look at the appropriate workloads and make sure that it's going to meet the workload requirements you have and the data modeling requirements, because there aren't any sophisticated data modeling tools, for example, for Hadoop just yet. So, I think you just have to be careful and look at your requirements there.
Great. This is for you, Anurag. What version of MicroStrategy required for using Hadoop?
So Hadoop has been certified with MicroStrategy for some time, 9.2, 9.3 onwards. Specifically with Hortonworks, HDP 2.0 was certified in our latest release, but HDP 1.3 I think was certified with 9.3 and 9.3.1 as well. So even if you're not on the latest version of MicroStrategy, there's definitely some there's definitely connectivity available to Hadoop. It really depends on what you're using, and in most cases, it is also just a matter of what we certified, because what we tested with in what mode, and sometimes even if we didn't test a certain configuration, it might work. It's just that's something that we haven't done. So it depends on exactly what you need, but with the latest release of MicroStrategy, the MicroStrategy Analytics platform, HDP 2.0 is definitely certified.
Great. I guess this kind of aligns to what you just answered. Does the MicroStrategy Hive interface support the full Hive QL operators and functions natively?
That's correct. So we basically certify Hive 0.11 at this point. I think 0.12 is coming up or around the corner or something like that, and I'm sure our labs team is working on that right now.
Okay, great. And then probably a use case of some sort, but how will this solution benefit education institutions, for example, public schools, colleges, and university?
That's a great question. So it really depends on what the use case might be for education. In our experience, and it's nothing against the education industry, but it seems like that's the types of solutions and architectures that they might be working on try to lag the industry by a bit. So, in terms of understanding, education, key education metrics, whether that is performance of students, whether that is management of funds, whether that is tying in data from other things like maybe bringing in alumni information in terms of how they might be interacting and so on and so forth with whether that's universities or colleges or whatnot. It can be used in any of those use cases to the extent that the organization feels Hadoop is the right solution for them from a data storage, data processing standpoint.
That's good.
Yep, great. And then another question for you as well. Any specific predictive analytics capabilities within MicroStrategy platform?
Yeah, so we definitely have a few data mining and predictive analysis capabilities that we've baked into ours. In fact, we looked at a survey of what are the key things companies do. The two or three things that popped up at the top were association analysis, regression analysis, and I'm forgetting the third one. But we found that obviously those are things that you're able to do with MicroStrategy. But there was a list of like 8 or 10 others that some of which were available in MicroStrategy and some of which were something that we could integrate with using R or using PML. So the short answer is we're able to support a lot of the use cases, and if there's a specific need you have, definitely approach us and we can tell you a little bit more about it.
Great. This question came in for you, John. How would you set up a Hadoop environment if you already have a traditional data warehouse?
Mm-hmm. Well, as we were saying, the Hadoop complements, generally speaking, what you're going to do in your data warehouse. So we always advise folks so it's a separate cluster. You're going to set it up, in some adjacent infrastructure. You probably need just a few nodes. of machines to get a cluster up and running, and then you can start loading data into it. So if you've got one of those 6 data types that we talked about, or some other kind of data that you want to load, then you put data into that and treat it as a separate infrastructure, but there are connectors. So depending on what kind of data warehouse system you have, whether it's Teradata or some other, there are connectors that allow you to also move data back and forth between those infrastructures. Something, again, we'd be happy to come and talk with you more about.
Great. A couple questions that came in. When can we expect to see Hortonworks sandbox tutorial that includes MicroStrategy integration? So I guess, like John was saying, it's coming soon. We're working on it. We'll probably have it for you the same time as the recording, just so you guys can watch the recording and kind of reference it for your tutorial. So by the end of this week, we hope. For John, what development software tools will be helpful for getting started on Hadoop data warehouse?
So software development tools, there are different IDEs out there that you can use, whether you're developing on a Microsoft platform, which Hadoop does run natively on Microsoft and the Hortonworks data platform, or standard Java development tools are available for you to go ahead and start to create programs, whether it's using the PIG scripting language or other. I mean, I would highly recommend getting the sandbox because it has tutorials for specifically Hive and Pig and MapReduce. And so in terms of the fastest way to get your hands dirty in the technology and learn it kind of in a safe environment is really through that sandbox.
Great. I think this is for Anurag. Should I expect performance issues when building a Hadoop-based MicroStrategy solution?
I mean, it seems to be a loaded question because ultimately performance is such a variable thing, and it really depends on what the requirements are of the analysis. But I mean, to the extent Hive is our primary mechanism for accessing data in Hadoop. So to the extent that you've modeled your data in Hadoop in Hive in a proper way, and the performance that you're getting from your Hadoop infrastructure based on the hardware that you're using, along with that, will determine how performance is going to be. So in certain cases, it could be slower depending on what you have. Other cases might be quicker. It really just depends.
Great. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Will MicroStrategy generate multi-pass SQL against Hive?
That's a good question. I believe it does, but it's something that this is something I'm not completely sure about. I'll have to get back on this question.
Okay, yeah, and Andrew, we will get back to you on that. So probably get an email from one of the speaker on your question. Is MicroStrategy a distributed in-memory technology?
A distributed in-memory technology. Right now, it is not. The example that I was referencing with Facebook is next-generation technology that I can't talk too much about, but that's where we're addressing distributed. Right now, we're pretty much a scale-up type of solution from the standpoint of having one query run in an environment. We also offer clustering capabilities, so we can spread the load of multiple users and multiple queries across nodes, across different machines. So scale out in that sense. But one query, one request only goes against one node at this point. We don't distribute that.
Great. One last question. What was the total size of data that was analyzed for the demo?
I think it was in the low gigabyte range, and that was really because it was a demo that we were putting together. What we have noticed, I mean, I think that the real question here is how much data can you put in memory in MicroStrategy at this point, and we have customers who are running tens of gigabytes or up to hundreds of gigabytes of cubes in memory. And again, we're working on next generation of increasing that threshold over by orders of magnitude.
Great. So on that note, I'm going to end our webinar for today. So I'd like to thank John and Anurag for helping us present. The recording will be available, you guys, by the end of this week, and you guys will get a nice little email from me telling you when and how you can get access to it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll try to get them answered as soon as we can. With that, I'd like to thank everyone, and have a good rest of the day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.